22nd, and signed by their president, Tom Farrell, of the Associated School Boards. So I have a certificate for all the board members, and I'm going to make you guys stand up and shake my hand. Actually, I'll give it to you, then when we're done with the meeting, we'll take a picture so we can put it in the paper for Val. How's that sound? These are high quality. We found the paper in a drawer somewhere, and it's better than just the regular stuff, so we use cardstock. So, and I just want to say thanks to all the board members too, from a personal perspective. I know when I first took the job, you know, there were some issues with the building project and things, but I really feel that over the last 7 months that I've been here, things have really come together very nicely, and I feel that we're working very well as a team together, and that has nothing to do with the fact that you're doing my evaluation later tonight. It's true. I think you guys have done a great job, and I think we should all be proud of the work that we've done so far this school year for the community of Faulkton and the surrounding schools that are part of our district. So thank you from me personally.
Number 3, conflict of interest waivers are none. Number 4, open forum time. Anybody? None. Number 5, consensus agenda. Need a motion and a second to approve the consensus agenda consisting of 5.1 minutes from the January 14th regular meeting, 5.2 financial report, January 5.3 trust and agency report, 5.4 in-press report, 5.5 presented bills for February 13th.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, business and finance. 6.1, opt-out resolution.
Yeah, I'm going to plug in my remote this slide. Sounds good. I've still been trying to call Ryan to know what.
Your call has been forwarded.
Can this come on the slides? Yeah. It's right here.
It's in this side.
No, it's not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Click on it right there. Yep. That's to control it.
Oh, it's fancy.
It is. High tech if it works.
Otherwise, you're going to hit me with a ruler and that didn't click every time.
It's not seeing it, Craig, for some reason on here. Not this, the whole PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. But it is now.
Okay, so I'm going to try to do this and try to call Ryan at the same time to get him on if we can.
Your call has been forwarded to.
I know on the agenda the board's gonna consider doing an opt-out resolution, and I felt that it would be very beneficial for me just to walk the school board and anybody from the community that's here through an opt-out process, the difference between the general fund and capital outlay, because our funds are split into 2 separate pools of money, and we're only allowed to use those pools for very specific things. And so I'm going to go through and just talk a little bit about it. And again, if anybody has questions, please just put your hand up or just ask a question, and I will stop and try to explain it better for you. So I'm going to start with the general fund. This one, it's South Dakota law, codified law 1316-3. The general fund of a school district is a fund provided by law to meet all the operational costs of the district. And so that's what we basically, our day-to-day stuff is primarily taken out of the general fund. For example, we pay salaries, we purchase classroom supplies, we pay officials, we buy consumables, and we provide professional development for staff. That's just a very small example of what that money is used for. Just so everybody knows, out of that total amount of our general fund, it's closer to 85 because the state said that we had to use 85% of it to go toward teachers. but in the past several years, the percentage of money that goes to salaries has been 80 to 85%. So 85% of it right off the top goes for salaries, for everybody. Paraprofessionals, teachers, administrators, anybody that works in the school district comes out of that. Say that again?
And benefits.
And benefits, and retirement, and health. I mean, all that stuff's benefits. So that's all included in that 85%. But just so you know, I mean, 85% goes toward having staff here at school. And so that's a lot. So we only are left with 15%. Purchases have to be typically under $1,000. And basically these funds come to us in the form of a per student allocation. So typically right now it's around $4,900 per student, and that's kind of changed a little bit with the new funding formula. There's a lot of parts to it that I don't want to get into because it will really confuse you. But so we get money for every student that we have in our district, and that goes into our general fund. For the most part, these funds can't be transferred. I mean, we can't take money out of the general fund and deposit it into the capital outlay fund. What we get for general fund is what we get. Okay, now on to capital outlay. Again, that's a state law, 13-16-6. The capital outlay fund of a school district is a fund provided by law to meet expenditures which results in acquisition or leasing of land or additions to real property, plant, or equipment. So basically, it's anything that deals with our buildings, our grounds, and things like that. And that's it. I typically can't take salaries out of it. I can't buy classroom supplies less than $1,000 out of it. Like I said, it's typically used for new construction, remodels, and maintenance of buildings. May not exceed 3% of the taxable valuation, which is $3 per thousand. Student transportation services contract, which, just so everybody knows, we contract our bus services with Foreman's out of Miller. We can pay that contract out of capital outlay. Any improvements to our grounds, if we purchase or lease equipment, textbooks, and software for instructional purposes is primarily what we use our capital outlay money for. Now, they have allowed some flexibility in it, which allows us to pay, if we wanted to, some of our utilities. We're already paying our busing contract. Some of our fuel we could take out of there, property and casualty insurance. We could do that. Typically, those are general fund expenditures. The state legislature years ago gave some flexibility to school districts because everybody was complaining about the amount that we were getting with the per student allocation not being enough. And they could afford to run their school district. But all these school districts had all this capital outlay money sitting there, but couldn't use it for some of these other things. So the state legislature basically said, all right, we'll allow you to use up to 45% of it to be transferred to the general fund. Now remember, I said in the last slide, you can't take general fund and transfer money into capital outlay, but you can use general or capital outlay to pay for some general fund expenditures. The problem with that is a lot of schools were worried that at some point the state legislature was going to say, nope, we're not going to allow that anymore. And now you've been doing it for 10 years, you're used to doing it, and now you got to put all that money back in general fund, and you can't afford to do it. So a lot of schools, some schools did it, some schools do it very limited, and some schools don't do it at all. And these funds we get basically right from the taxes levied against property in the district. So that's where we get it from, and it's a mill levy on a certain dollar amount per thousand valuation of property. Capital outlay limitations. These are brand new. Starting with taxes payable in 2021, they're going to limit capital outlay to $2,800 per student, which is different. And so if you look at what we could and we were bringing in for capital outlay, once this goes into effect, one more year from now, when we do a budget year, it's going to be limited to $2,800 per student. Now, I will say this. Today at the state legislature and the House Education Committee, on an 11-3 vote to pass it, Representative Gosh, who's one of our local legislators, sponsored a bill to drop the cap and go back to the way the capital outlay was back to 2016, when there was no cap on it, and then we could raise the limit up to $3 per thousand. So it basically takes this cap off. But that's one of basically 5 steps that a bill has to go through. So now it will go to the House of Representatives, they'll argue it, and either pass it or not pass it. Then it'll go to Senate Education Committee, they'll either pass it or not, and if it passes, it goes to the Senate to debate, and then if it passes there, then the governor has to sign it into law. And so it's a long ways from going anywhere, but the first hurdle was cleared today. And this will impact our district. We will have less capital outlay dollars to spend because of this cap. And for the school year 2022, the amount for each enrolled student, and that's after the cap's in place, it will increase a lot like our student allocation does for the general fund. It will increase by the lesser of 3%, or wherever the index factor is, whichever is less. So if the index factor is 2, they'll add 2% to the capital outlay amount to that $2,800. And so they're going to treat it just kind of like they're treating the per student allocation, if that limit stays in effect. The bond issue, we just passed a $9 million bond issue in December. That money does not go to the general fund. That money goes right into capital outlay to pay for the new building, property, the maintenance, whatever, of that new building. So it will go into capital outlay, not into the general fund. So let's talk about an opt-out now, because that's kind of what we're going to do here, maybe next. South Dakota schools are increasingly reliant on opt-outs. That's because they don't have enough money in their general fund to operate. A lot of schools have plenty of money in their capital outlay accounts, but not in their general funds. So it's forcing schools to do an opt-out. Because of the nominal increases in state aid, they've had to either make cuts to staff or to programs, or you opt out. More than 44%, 66 school districts in South Dakota have opt-outs in place. So 2 years ago, schools only received a 0.3% increase in their student allocation for the general fund. 1% in 2018 with a one-time increase of 0.7%. There were a couple years back, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where for 2 years in a row we got 0. No increase to our general fund, to our per student allocation. So we're actually still behind where we should have been if the state legislature would have given us our required by law increase of the index factor, or 3%, whichever is less. And people still scratch their heads, it's a law, but yet they kind of broke their own law in not giving us at least the index factor. And I don't know how you do that and still have a job, but they did. So our law does provide a mechanism for schools to raise more money. Board passes a resolution to opt out. And so tonight we're going to talk about that. And the board can pass a resolution to opt out. And then the public always has an option to take out a petition and take it to a public vote. That's what's in South Dakota law to be able to raise more money for schools. So, now before everybody freaks out with this next slide, this is not what we've done, nor what we would do or what we're going to do. But typically, when schools can't raise money, either an opt-out fails, or they just decide that there's no way it's going to pass, we need to do something. And a lot of districts, when they get to that point, when they know that the budget's tight, they try to do what they can internally to try to do some things with that budget before they ask the public to opt out. And so a lot of schools, again, this is not what I'm suggesting or recommending, it's just what some area schools have done. You can eliminate a music program, reduce staff, increase class sizes. You can reduce custodial positions, reduce paraprofessionals, which we have very few. You could drop an activity, wrestling, track, one act, anything, FFA, whatever the board decides is best. Not replace athletic uniforms for a whole cycle. And so you're going to wear the same uniform for a couple more years as opposed to the cycle that we currently have uniforms on. You could reduce an activities director position, and you could assign it to Craig or to me. So there's all kinds of things you could do, and schools do this. You know, the guy over in Hoven is one of my friends, Mr. Hurd. I mean, that guy's the K-12 principal, the superintendent, the SPED director, the transportation guy, and deals with lunch. And that's typical for smaller plays for the last 5 years. And as you can see, the opt-out is for $450,000, and the amount in the column that says opt-out is the $450,000, the amount requested, and then the amount received. And so what you'll see in that far right column is that we've never actually, except 1 year, received the full amount. And then what happens with that is your taxes get adjusted accordingly. So whatever we ask for over here, like this $245,000, they'll go back in and adjust your taxes. If we ask for the full $450,000, your taxes would go up a little bit for that opt-out portion of it. And so it's a good thing when we ask for less, but keep in mind that the taxes come in on halves.
January to December, and our year is
July
to June. We're on different years as them. So the first year asking for $450,000, we only received half of that because we didn't ask for it until our year.
And that's why that one's $450,000.
So then you go down to the second year, well, that's a bad example. Go down to the third year, and we'll get half of the $450,000 and half of the $275,000 in that school year. Does that make sense? So we received half of $450,000 and half of $275,000 to equal the $362,000. And then each year is the same.
So, and then Lisa put on the bottom, if you look, we could have received $2.25 million in the 5 years. We actually only received $1.52 million is what we needed. So that's just a quick look. Now, just as a reminder, some things that we've done prior to me getting here, and this goes back to prior administration, the school board, prior school boards, to try to make our budget work the best way that we can. Elementary principal was combined with superintendent. So that's what I have right now, elementary principal and superintendent job, and I also am in charge of the 3 colonies. We reduced the art program. So we don't have an art program, but I know that through talks we desire to hire an art teacher back. We have not done that yet. We cut back on some busing of junior high kids' activities. A lot of our parents will transport our junior high students instead of us having to get buses. We've gone from 2 music teachers down to 1. We've gone from 2 title teachers down to 1. Our ELA teacher is a 7 through 12 teacher, so middle school and high school, which is pretty common, but it didn't used to be that way. Science is the same way. We have 5 teachers that basically teach classes all through kindergarten through 12th grade. So like Chase Casper, for example, teaches some elementary computers, and then he teaches some older kids PE. And so we have a lot of teachers that are doing that. Cross-country program, that's something that we got rid of, and it's slowly coming back, where it's being supported more by the school. And the golf program, and that's also back too. So those are some things that we've done. Now, this is one thing that just, and I hope I don't make anybody mad, but I'm going to go through this slide, and hopefully it's okay. I think trust is a big deal here. And I think that these people that sit up at the table and represent our community, the school board members, they get elected by the public to make decisions like they're going to make tonight, like the decisions they made with the building project. And I hadn't been here for, I think it was maybe 2 months, and I had somebody tell me that I needed to trust the board, and so I did. And we got to where we're at right now with the building project, trusting the school board. And I didn't know them that well. I had my interview with them, I think, in April, and I'd worked with them for a couple months and very sporadically at that time. And so people are telling me to trust the board. We elected them, it's time to trust them. And so now it's my turn to put that right back on our public. You know, these guys are the ones that approve our budget. They go through with us, with Lisa, with me, with Craig, and they make sure that what we're asking for, the budget, is a legitimate budget, and that we need the money in the form of an opt-out. Because without the opt-out, I'm just going to tell you, we wouldn't be sitting where we're at financially right now without it. And when because I've been around the block a time or two, and I've been to a lot of school districts, and I can honestly say this school district, the Faulkton Area School District, financially speaking, is sitting on very solid, very good terms right now. We wouldn't be if the opt-out doesn't go through, if we didn't pass an opt-out. And so I feel very comfortable with what Lisa's doing and how she's kind of turned things around and where we're headed financially. We're sitting great. There are a lot of other schools out there that every day they just wonder how they're going to pay for things. We don't have to do that because people have put the faith in the school board, and we know from 5 years ago, because we had a public vote on the opt-out, that we need an opt-out in place. Now, we don't always have to ask for all the money, and we won't do that. We will continue to not do that if the need is not there. But just keep in mind that a lot of times when these opt-outs don't pass, I hate to bring up Redfield, but I'm going to. Redfield told me that they're looking at cutting $150,000 out of their general fund. And so where did I say 85% of a general fund comes from? Salaries. So yeah, they can cut $1,000 here or there for athletics, for supplies for classroom teachers, but $2,000 or $3,000 is a heck of a long way from $150,000. And so my guess is that they're either going to lose teachers or they're going to lose programs for their kids. I don't want to be in that same boat that Redfield's in right now. I have been, when I was in Custer, the guy before me, before he left, he cut $1.3 million out of the general fund. And we cut a lot of teachers. And he did that before I got there, which I'm like, whew, thank goodness. But when I got in there, guess what I had to do? I had to cut another $500,000 out of the general fund. And so when we had teachers that would retire, we would just get rid of them, and through attrition, we would not fill that spot back, and then we'd have to rearrange all the schedules and do things. So I just don't want to get to that point. And again, I think that where we're at financially comes from the hard work of the school board, prior school boards, our former administrators. I have not been there, so I can't take any credit for it, and school board members that have been on the school board. It's very difficult to manage a budget of a school district, millions and millions of dollars, and we've always got to keep what's in the best interest of our kids. And so I think that's really tough. And my last thing is this is an investment in providing quality educational services for our students in our district. And so I really feel like we need to pass the opt-out, and I really feel like the public just needs to trust us and say, yep, you're right, we need it, and it doesn't have to go to a vote because we've already passed it once. But that's me. And keep in mind, I think a lot of people have to think that if we pass an opt-out, that their taxes are going to change. Well, if it fails, then that part of it will come off your taxes. You won't pay it anymore. But it's already on there right now. And so it's not like it's going to increase your taxes. It's already there. It's not a new tax. It's not in addition to anything. It's already there. And again, I talked about it. There's a definite need for the opt-out, and I really hope that the public would trust the school board. So that's all I have. That's my little spiel. Have you any questions for me? And you guys, it's hard to understand general fund and capital outlay. I think everybody just thinks that this is the money that we have and we just spend it. Well, we don't. Lisa's got to be very careful where she codes things to, because when we get audited, certain things can come out of capital outlay and some things can't. And if it's in there wrong, Lisa's got to go in and make a correction. We've got to take it out of the right account, and it's kind of a big mess. So, all right, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Gass. You're a great man of white.
Any questions?
Should I try to call Ryan before we get it? Sure. I kind of forgot.
I'll make a resolution for the opt-out.
The
governing board of the Falcon Area School District 24-4 do state that the above said board is unable to operate under the tax limitation measure currently in statute. That we therefore opt out of such tax limitation in amount of $450,000 starting with the calendar year 2019 taxes payable in the calendar year 2020. This opt-out will be for 5 years, which will be through taxes payable through the calendar year 2024. This action has been taken by the board and approved by at least 2/3 of the vote of the board. This decision may be referred to a vote of the people upon petition signed by at least 5% of the registered voters in the district and filed with the governing body within 20 days of the first publication of this decision. Unless this action is referred to the vote of the people and reversed by such a vote, this resolution authorizes the county auditor to spread the excess levy to raise tax dollars in the above stated amount. Do a vote on. I need a motion and a second for the resolution.
I'll make the motion for this resolution.
Do roll call vote. BJ?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Jerry? Yes. Motion carries. So move on to 6.2 fiscal year 2018 audit.
Yes, it is, sorry. We got our audit back from Department of Legislative Audit, and it's been approved. So I put copies on the table if anyone wants to look at them. It'll be in the office. It's also on board docs. We don't need a motion or anything.
You don't need me to go through all 57 pages?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Can you read them all?
I haven't looked through all 57 pages.
We'll move on to 7.1, the superintendent's.
All right, very quickly. All right, school webpage. Jeremy and I have completed all of the training for the school webpage. This week, I just have to have them activate it. It will go active, and it actually looks pretty nice. So I'm going to do it this week before the weekend gets here, and so we'll have a new look to our webpage. I like it, and it's very easy for us to go in and change things, and I think it'll be really user-friendly. The only issue right now that we see is there's an events calendar on the side that is really nice, but the way we do our calendar right now, we list, you know, the JV game of the boys, the varsity game of the boys, the JV game of the girls, and the varsity game of the boys, or the girls. So that's 4 events. So when it shows like a day, like tomorrow, we have a double header. Tomorrow the 14th, we'll have 4 different activities, and you won't be able to see what is on the 15th on Friday, unless you scroll a little bit. But if there's a bunch of stuff going on, like an FFA activity, if there's an FCCLA event, which there is a lot of times, you might not see what's tomorrow unless you scroll down. And so we're going to try to work through that and try to decide what needs to be on that event calendar, and maybe come up with a different way of listing other school activities as opposed to athletics somehow. But we'll work through that. Curriculum review. We will be doing a curriculum review this year to end the year, and we will be reviewing social studies for curriculum adoption. And like I said, this process needs to begin pretty soon because we got a lot going on here once the school year is over. We will be participating in doing a Teacher of the Year award. I just feel like we have some quality teachers, and I've already put the nomination forms out there for the staff, and we also sent them out to the public as well who can nominate a teacher for a Teacher of the Year award. And then that person would go on to a regional competition and possibly compete then for the State Teacher of the Year award. I'm going to start my coffee with the superintendent here pretty quick out at Burmax. I've been talking to Shane a lot about it. I'd kind of like to wait and see how, if we catch any rumors of anybody wanting to take the opt-out that we just passed to a public vote. But I might just have one and just let people come and talk, and I can do a little educating on the opt-out and the capital outlay and stuff I did with you guys tonight at that meeting. I'm gonna start at Burmax and maybe try to work it around and go to different places in town, but I'm gonna start there. And Shane said that he would either give me a really good discount on the coffee, because I'm gonna pay for it out of my own pocket, or he would donate it during that time. So, and I'll try to hit a time when there's a lot of people there, either in the morning. I know there's a guys group that goes there in the morning, there's a ladies group that goes there in the afternoon, so I might try to make it to both of them. I've reached out to staff to try to get some ideas for the school calendar for next year. I'm going to start working on it, but right now it's really tough to do anything without knowing the construction timeline and where we're at and what we're doing with that. I'll talk a little bit more about it during the building project update, but we are planning to have a meeting tomorrow with Kuipers Carlson. So I'm guessing that after our meeting tomorrow, I'm going to know a heck of a lot more about the building project and kind of a direction for the school calendar for next year. The next two things, I was approached by a member of the Masons, the Masonic Lodge, and they have a couple of really, really good programs that I've been a part of before. One is the South Dakota CHIP program, which basically provides parents information on their children for identification kits in case your child should become missing or lost or whatever. And it includes dental impressions, DNA cheek swabs, a digital photo, fingerprints, and a little video that goes into it. And I can remember back when I was a kid, my mom had this thing in her fridge, and it almost looked like was a bottle about this big, kind of had a pointy tip and a big cap on the back with an orange sticker on it. And that's what it was, and I didn't know that until I said something to the guy about it. And he goes, yeah, that's what they used to look like. But that's where you kept them, was in your refrigerator. So I think she kept it up in like a little butter dish up in the door. But she had 3 of them up there, one for each of us, in case something would happen to us. And back then, we ran around the neighborhood like crazy and didn't care who was around or what we did. So the second one is a student assistance program. And I was part of that when I was the principal at Beersford High School several years ago. And it's a really good program, and it really provides tools for people at school to recognize any child that is at risk and basically how to help them heal. And we talked on a very simplistic level all the way up to complicated issues where students are considering hurting themselves. We talked about a kid the other day in the office. I had the game warden from Redfield showed up to offer to do some programs here at school, and one of our little elementary girls was in the office, and she was talking, and she started talking to him about how one of her cats died out on the farm, and this little girl was just sobbing about her cat. And he's trying to talk, oh, do you have a dog? Try to get her off the subject of the cat. But at that moment, that little girl was at risk because she was thinking about her cat that had just died. And she wasn't thinking about anything else. So that happens when kids lose their glasses in class. They can't tell what's going on. They need their glasses. So I know like in Beersford, we took a collection, all the staff did, and we were able to help that family purchase new glasses for their kid. But that was all through this program, and it's a very valuable thing. And he's going to get back to me, and I would like our district to participate. So once I get information, they pay for everything. They pay for the subs in the classroom. They pay for our mileage there, so it's a very worthwhile program. Other than that, I will be at my region superintendent meeting in Pierre next week on Wednesday, and other than that, I am around. So that's it. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Move on to 8.1, secondary principals report.
Okay, just I'm not going to bore everybody with a read through every single slide of this PowerPoint. I'm going to highlight, and everybody should have this on board docs. We'll put it up here for the public. But just so that the board's aware, today was actually the first day we were originally planning on doing this earlier this week, but with some of the weather, we had to push it off to today, but met with the juniors today, we'll be seniors next year, and we'll be working our way down, myself and Mrs. Weisler, our school counselor. We will also be having our traditional parent meeting with our 8th grade students as they'll be entering as freshmen, and we'll have for sure one, if not two, parent meetings on dual credit options. But if you recall from the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about graduation requirements. Last summer, they were actually adopted officially in August. They were adopted in July and finalized in August after the 30-day window. And school districts had the opportunity to go full bore in with the new graduation requirements, or go with a soft implementation where you basically be running the 2009, the ones we're currently under, in conjunction with the 2018 graduation requirements, or the third option would be to hold off until 2020-21. And everything that I'm going to be giving you is for information only. There's no board action needed on this. But the last time that the state of South Dakota changed graduation requirements was 2009. So through some different work groups and some studies, it was determined that what we had was not a one-size-fits-all. So there was a push to go away from the 2009 pathways and try to bring back some more flexibility for school districts. The key to the whole flexibility idea, I want the board to understand, the public to understand, with the increase in flexibility, and the state is on board with this too, that does not mean that we are lowering our expectations or dummying down our requirements. In fact, the number of credits needed to graduate is still the same. Meeting with my juniors today, I had to explain to them that, hey, we got these new graduation requirements, and as soon as I said that, they're wily enough to know, well, that doesn't really affect me because I got started with my plan of study 3 years ago. This is only going to affect maybe the 8th graders. Well, what the state is what they put out there was it goes into effect for everybody in 2021. And the reason they can do that is the state did not add, the DOE did not add extra requirements in this current setup to current high school students. It's still at 22, but it allowed for some flexibility in where you can earn those credits. So having said that, our sophomores won't have a choice. They'll be under the new requirements, which essentially gives a endorsement, and there's still some, not really sure how this is going to look, but it'll be on the transcript. Not sure if there'll be a sticker on the diploma or not, but the transcript is actually more important. That will say you earned an advanced endorsement, an advanced career endorsement, or an advanced honors endorsement. Some of this is semantics. It's just different language for some of the stuff we're already doing. I'm going to jump through the comparison screens and get to where it really affects Faulkner. So, and this is a PowerPoint that was produced by the Department of Ed. I adjusted it for some of our local requirements. It's available to anybody in the public out there. They tried to use some graphic organizers with some different colored apples to kind of explain to people how English changed from 2009 requirements to now, and essentially it's the same on the English. It's the math and the science that is different. What you'll see when you go through it is instead of a unit of writing, now a unit, so everybody understands, is 1 full year. So instead of 1 unit of writing, the new requirement has 1.5 units of writing. This does not require us to change our curriculum, because instead of it being, okay, we do writing only in this semester, or we only do public speaking during sophomore speech. That's an old way of thinking. Now with the English content standards, your writing, your reading, your literature is spread throughout the high school years. It's not just one particular year. So I'm going to jump ahead to a slide that probably will make a little more sense to us locally on what we will be doing, which we're actually already doing. Fine arts, the PE has not changed at all. Personal finance has not changed. Health has not changed. The one thing that could be a change is if you've been paying attention to Governor Noem's State of the State and some of the civics push that she has, whether it's with the taking the test for citizenship or whatever it might be, getting more civics into, that's a ways away yet. So we don't even really worry about it until we're being told this is what you need to do. So I've got our Trojan in here to talk what we do above and beyond, just so that the board understands. We do require 2 units of computer science. The current South Dakota high school requirement, graduation requirements, doesn't require that. We did this in 2007 when we became a one-to-one school, and that's just one thing we do. It doesn't mean that our students need 23 credits to graduate. You still need 22, but 2 of those of the 22 comes from a computer science course. We also require all of our seniors to do one of 3 things. Either do a student internship, the senior experience, which used to be called senior project, or they take an AP course, which is actually fewer and fewer students do that, or a dual credit course. So again, that's an additional requirement that our district requires. You can't go below or less than the state requirement, but you can add more to it. Our electives from 2009 to 2018 is still the same. The total units are the same. So I really want to caution people to not get too bent out of shape when they hear about new graduation requirements being instituted for their son or daughter if they're a sophomore, because the only changes come about with the flexibility. So it's the next 3 slides that I want to talk about with these different endorsements a little bit more. So with the advanced endorsement, we take a look up here at the screen. It breaks it down. It's color coordinated. Again, this is available on the DOE website with our 4 English, 3 math, 3 science, 3 social studies, the fine arts, the PE, health, personal finance, and CTE. But the advanced endorsement does still require the geometry and the algebra 2. So this is similar to what we're doing right now. So if students, our current juniors, go with what we're doing now, they would get that advanced endorsement certificate. 1 unit of biology with 2 units of other lab sciences. Now, our other lab science is freshman physical science. And then those students take either chemistry, physics, or biology too. But according to the state, with the advanced endorsement now, you wouldn't necessarily have to do chemistry. You wouldn't have to do physics. You could actually replace those in there through some dual credit or South Dakota Virtual School or another approved science course. The career endorsement is the big change. This is a new endorsement that's out there. And I will say this, this push and these graduation requirements being changed really came down, the big pushers were the big schools, not small schools like us. The big schools were looking at their dropout rates, and they were trying to figure out a way that, or asking the question of the state, why are we requiring a student to take Algebra 2 and Geometry if they're going to go to a 2-year school, or maybe not even go to a second schooling after high school? Why are we doing this and setting them up to fail? And the state listened to that and came about with these new requirements. So if you look at the middle section here with the CTE or the capstone experience, here's where we have, I would say, a huge advantage and a leg up over a lot of smaller schools, because we have 3 approved CTE programs right now. So we will have no issues at all. If we have a student down the road that wants to go for the career endorsement and maybe not load up on that math and science, they still need to get their 3 units. If you take a look at your PowerPoint, it says 1 unit of algebra math, you need 2 more years. It just doesn't have to be geometry algebra 2. They still need their 3 science. But some of these smaller schools don't have this option in the middle to prove CTE. We do. We have our business and management is one of our approved clusters. We have the ag, food, natural resources, AFNR, and we have our human services. So we have 3 approved CTEs. We also, at the bottom, require our juniors to take the RC assessment, and that's a certificate assessment put out by the Department of Labor, and all of our students received a certificate this year, all of our juniors. So we're kind of ahead of the ballgame when it comes to the CTE end of things. That's the advanced career endorsement. You'll notice on the advanced career endorsement, it talks about an industry recognized credential. This would be like your OSHA training, safe food training, a couple other ones, the beef quality assurance, EMT training can be a recognized credential. These cost money, and most schools that do this get business partners out there in the community. Again, because we do the NCRC, we are not forced to have to do this at this time. So the board understands we're not adding something, another hoop to jump through, and trying to find the money for our students to do this. Final endorsement is called the Advanced Honors Endorsement. It's a fancy way of saying the Opportunity Scholarship Pathway. So with the Advanced Honors Endorsement, still looking at a total of 22 credits, having the 4 years of English, having the math, but now if you want to get that endorsement on your diploma, you do need the Geometry Algebra 2 and a unit of advanced math. It could be in-house pre-calc. That could be a semester of college algebra through dual credit. The same with the science. You do need to now have chemistry or physics. You'll need a 4th science. We offer biology 2 as our 4th. A student can get that through dual credit. And with the social studies, you need 3 units, and it has to be world geography and world history. Locally, we do require world geography, world history, so students would be getting that part of it anyway. The one that seems to, every year we talk about this till we're blue in the face with our incoming freshmen, but so people understand, you do not need a foreign language to get the South Dakota Opportunity Scholarship. If you want to get the Regent Scholar Diploma, the Regent Scholar Certificate, no money tied to that, but it's a nice honor, you need 2 years of a consecutive of the same foreign language. That's the difference there. But in terms of the Opportunity Scholarship or the Advanced Honors Endorsement, you don't need the world language, and we have CTE courses all over the place for people to get that. So we're in really good shape, and then their electives ends up being a little bit less. They can go above and beyond that, but they won't need all those other electives. Again, with South Dakota Opportunity Scholarship, I went over this with the juniors today. The other key point to this is you also have to at least earn a C in every one of those courses. That's required, not necessarily these extra electives, but you do need a C or better, and a C minus is not a C. And we do a minus plus system of grading, so it really hasn't changed. So in a nutshell, so the board understands what's going on, no action required on this. We are preparing our students right now for these new graduation standards so they know what's going on. And obviously when we have our meetings with parents of 8th graders coming into freshmen, we don't even look at 2009 and talk about some of those things because it won't be in existence in 2 years. In 2021, everybody in the state is going to be using this, and who knows, we might be doing citizenship tests too. That is yet to be determined. That is a lot of stuff. It's out there on the DOE website. We'll be having our parent meetings as we move through on this. We're trying to get some numbers for you guys more in advance than years past, so we can start looking at possible headaches that we might run into with class sizes with the building project. See, Lisa, I didn't talk about every single slide.
You show off your stock. No.
I had one going, it's still at 0. So, all joking aside though, if there's any questions and you don't want to ask them now, this goes to the public too, stop in and see myself. Mr. Lepke's up to speed on this stuff for the most part too, I think.
9.1, building project update.
Okay, in your packet, I basically just kind of put in just a summary of what's taken place. Basically, since we had our last meeting with Kybers Carlson. And just as a reminder, that's Scott McLeod and BJ and myself. to meet with them. And a lot of times it's been with the architect and Kybers Carlson, but just so it's kind of out there. Right now, they're about 2 weeks behind schedule of where they really wanted to be. They had originally talked about the demolition of the old building happening around June 10th. Now they're saying it will happen on around June 24th. Bids for the project will basically be awarded after school is out, and our school gets out on the 17th of May. So they will run the bids or run the RFPs for the people to do the electrical work or whatever. That will happen probably during April, I'm guessing, and they'll be due back at the end of May. There has been talk right now about not putting pitched roof, any type of pitched roof on any of the new building or the remodel. The cost of it's just becoming too restrictive, but I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit too. If they don't put up a pitched roof, they're going to put a penthouse on top of the elementary roof and actually on top of the new building as well. And that will house all of the HVAC equipment. That does still mean that in the remodel of the elementary school, that all of the heating and cooling units will be in the ceiling and not on the floor to take up space in the rooms, so that's a good thing. They were talking at first about doing rooftop units above each classroom, which, if you know anything about rooftop units, you've got to get the piping from the rooftop into the classroom, which means drilling a hole through the roof, which to me means a bunch of unnecessary leak points where leaks could happen. And I don't like that idea, but I do like the idea of a penthouse and running a lot of the piping still up underneath a little space up in the roof. Kybers wants us to take care of a few things before the demolition. We have an old diesel tank that we still do use in case the propane on our boilers happens to either be really expensive or just doesn't work. It can burn diesel fuel as well, so there's a tank behind the mechanical room right now that, according to the plan, will be part of the new building. So that's got to come out. You can't put a new building on top of a tank. We'll need to remove the fire panel and put it somewhere else. We'll have to move the servers and relocate and hook up a new electrical supply service somewhere. Right now that's down in the old mechanical room. They'll have to come out and get moved somewhere else. Right now the diesel tank will qualify for a state program that removes old tanks. That will be done at no cost to us, and the rest of the items will have a cost associated with them. They were also looking to try to save us some money by buying some used equipment from Redfield. I'm really not a big supporter of that, just simply because Redfield just built a new school, and if it wasn't good enough for them to put in their school, I don't really feel like it should be good enough for us to put in ours. So I don't like that idea, but it's things that they've talked about. The other thing that I think needs to be discussed, but again, no final decisions have been made on this one by any means. When we had our community meetings, we talked to the public about relocating the middle school and high school kids. Kybers Carlson is thinking that the remodel of the elementary school is a really extensive remodel. And they really are scared of trying to get it done in the 2 summers that they're going to be provided to do it. And so they've thrown out the idea of possibly displacing all of our kids, the elementary kids as well. And I've looked at it. I've gone over and taken a tour of the Methodist Church. I've been to the Catholic Church. We already basically, our administrative team, our building administrative team, the VAT team, we already had a plan basically in place for the middle school, high school kids. We were ready to go. They told us, here's what we're going to do. We met and we came up with a plan. And at that point, we're going to have to use the churches, but just for a little bit, for some summer school things and for some other things. But for the most part, most of the kids, middle school, high school kids, could be housed in our current facility. So like up by the band room, the shop area.
And when you say current facility, that would include city too.
Right,
city.
and I would include
this room.
This, because we're planning on using this, the community center. And also parts of like the shop and the music area that aren't going to be demolished. So we had that all planned out, and Kybers said that we should consider moving all the kids. I pitched some other ideas at them of some things that we could possibly do to try to avoid that situation. It's going to be very, very difficult, as I look at it, to move all the kids. Because I try to think about, if you put the elementary kids in here, and you try to get 6 classrooms in here, what type of a divider do you ever put up so that, I mean, you hear my voice, how it carries. And if you go into the rooms in the morning doing their daily routine, it gets pretty loud. So I'm like, okay, well, it'd be nice here because then they could just not get dressed and go to lunch. They could not get dressed and go to PE. They could not get dressed and go to music, which would be great, but then you worry about the instructional atmosphere or environment of the kids. Then you think about, well, let's leave the high school kids and middle school kids here, put the elementary at the 2 churches. Well, now every time you have PE, unless you redo how they do PE, it's cold out. Now they're putting their snow pants on, their boots on, their hats on. By the time you walk over here and get PE, and you get 10 minutes of PE, and you're putting your clothes back on to walk back to the church. And so the time lost between the buildings is another concern. So those are the main items that have been discussed so far. They've talked about areas that they want to block off for their staging area and for the construction part of it. I've been to a city council meeting, and right now the city is very okay with temporarily, only during the construction, making the street out in front of the school here a one-way street, going from the Catholic church this way toward the tennis courts, because they're going to have a fence out into the parking area in front of the school to keep people away from the building and the construction. And then in order to have a place for our kids to walk safely over to the lunchroom, they're going to put some big concrete, I don't know what they're called, but big barriers that you see on the highway for highway construction, out far enough from the fence so you can run a bobcat down and keep it cleared off in the wintertime if we need it. And then that would be pushed out into the street. So they're thinking having a one-way street would help with traffic flow and keep people from driving up on the gravel up close to people's houses. And then we're going to cordon off some of the playground and half of the street that's running in between the school and the house over here by the Catholic church. And still allow some access for the residents that live in the corner house, and still allow for room for our kids to have an area for recess out in the grassy field, because the playground out back behind the school will need to be removed because construction will be happening and remodeling will be happening there. And then where they want to have some of their area for unloading and storage, the area where the swing sets are at by the basketball court across the street, they're going to want to take those out as well. And they did talk about possibly relocating those somewhere. So a lot of their staging area is going to be out in the grass, out in the field, and up on the sidewalk. So that's everything that we've talked about. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock, DJ Scott and I meet with Kybers Carlson again and with HKG. And I'll know a whole lot more after the meeting tomorrow. And hopefully enough to where we will know what we're doing with the students. We'll be able to, they'll be able to provide me some direction as far as the school calendar. You know, are we going to have to start after Labor Day this year to give them some more time to do some things? Are we going to have to, my offer was to relocate the kids for a couple months maybe to the elementary school to give them a couple more months to work. While the weather's nice, we don't have to worry about snow pants and boots. Then when the weather's bad, we move back into whatever remodel they got done, and then we pull out again in the summer and let them have some more extra time the following summer. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. But as far as the board is concerned, after the meeting tomorrow, I'll send out a little update, and I want to meet with my administrative team to talk about the outcome of that meeting and kind of see where we're at and what we're going to be expecting. So the only other thing that I have, that's the update. Obviously now we're kind of getting down to crunch time where you know, some things need to be done, and so one thing I'd like the board to kind of talk about, or at least give me the authority to do, is you know, at what point do I get to make decisions about certain things so that we don't have to convene a board meeting to make all of these little decisions? And what I mean by that is Jeanette would like to get some storage containers moved in so she can start packing some things that we aren't using right now, and we really don't have a place for them. So what I would hate to do is, to have another board meeting in a week to approve 3 storage containers. Jerry and I have talked about, we put a dollar amount limit on it where I can only approve so much. But then by the time you figure 3 storage containers, that might be over the $10,000 limit for a year of rental on those things. And then we have to have a board meeting anyway. So I don't know if you guys want to have a dollar amount. If you want it to be where things like that, I get a hold of Scott and BJ, and the 3 of us decide. I kind of talk, and since they're on the building committee, we can kind of come up with a plan together. Because we'd like to at least start getting some of those rolled in here pretty quick, because Jeanette's got some time where a lot of the trophies can start getting packed up. We've talked about starting to pack the library. We've talked about using the bus garage. Some of those overhead doors and garages over there, there's some space there. And so we would have some space that we currently have and own that wouldn't cost us anything. But I just don't want to bore you guys with making some of those decisions, and I don't know what the magic dollar amount is, but I don't know what to tell you. I want to be able to make some decisions without having to convene everybody to have a board meeting that will last 15 minutes to decide we're going to get 2 storage containers and where we're going to put them. But
Yeah, I wonder if there should be just communication with BJ and Scott, and something big enough where they feel a board meeting is needed.
Or just let the board know, if you're making a decision like that, I think all of us are probably comfortable with you making that decision.
and I would hope
And
you
trusting
guys,
that, just to let us know that's what you're doing.
because I just think it's going to get to be pretty crazy here pretty soon, and I really don't think that we need a meeting for everything, but obviously for bigger things that, I've sat through the conversations. I kind of know what you as a board want and what you don't want, and so if they suggest something you don't want, I'm probably not going to make the decision to do it anyway. So, again, it kind of comes down to that, how much do you want me to do, how little do you want me to do? Some districts, the superintendent's kind of just been in charge and done it, and I don't want to go that far with it, because some of those decisions, like when we get to the point where we're doing change orders, those could be $80, $100, $150,000, and obviously that would be a board meeting, because that's a big deal. But I certainly don't think renting a couple storage containers is a big deal, and it's things like that we're going to have to do. And I'm going to have to figure out where the new electrical service is going to go. I really don't expect that we'd have to have a board meeting. It has to be done. Fire panel has to be moved. And rewiring and doing things. That right now is Jeremy thinks going to be between $20,000 to $30,000. So, but it has to be done. So again, I don't really feel like if you put a $10,000 limit on me, we're going to have to meet on something that has to get done anyway. So, and I don't care what you guys decide. I just want to know so that when I need to make the decision, I know that I can either make it or I have to do whatever I need to do, talk to Scott, talk to BJ, both of you, or have a board meeting.
Just something like the wiring have to go out on, or then you have to go out on bids.
If it's gonna be over 25,000, then it would. But again, it depends on what we have done. I don't think it'll be over 25,000, because the things that I want, some things are gonna have to be permanent, because then when the new building gets up, Jerry's gonna have to run other wires from where we're gonna move the servers at. And kind of make that our server room. He's going to have to run another fiber line back to the new building. So some of it's going to have to be permanent, and some of it doesn't have to be. But if it is, they'll have to get that out.
I would be fine just giving you the authority to make those decisions, and if you feel it's big enough to let us know if you want other approval, and then if somebody, you can just, in the informational process of letting us know if somebody has a question, they can contact you, and
Right.
from that point.
And Kyra said usually, they'll come to me, they're not going to expect an answer right away. So that gives me time to think about it. If I think, yeah, I probably should contact a few board members, that gives me time to do that. Or it gives me time to, talk to the admin team or do whatever I need to do to make sure it's being done the right way.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And I guess with the storage, I mean, you're gonna know what you need, so if you're gonna, I mean, you're gonna need it, so you're gonna have to just go out and get it.
Okay.
So once you find out, I guess then you can get over it.
Right.
Let us know, yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm okay with that.
Is this correct? The board advised Lefty to use his discretion to make those decisions and/or call a board meeting if he deems necessary. Agreed? Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, we'll go to 10.1, open forum time. Everybody got it? Go to 11.1, need a motion and a second to go into executive session for South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2, number 1 personnel.
I'll second the